Welcome back to the Grind Gaming Podcast. I am your host, Maura, aka Miss Mischief. Today I am joined by Brendan.
Hey there.
And Reid.
Howdy.
We're going to talk about a little bit of a variety of stuff. We're kind of changing the pace from normal, whereas we normally talk about just random shit. We'll probably...
Right, we have an actual... Well, we don't have a script.
It's
we
not
have
a
something
script.
to talk about.
We have something planned along with our menagerie of bullshit. It's fine.
It's not just going to devolve into me telling you stories about being in Lubbock for 4 years. Like it did last time.
Fuck that place. I don't want to go back.
No. We don't need to crap on Lubbock now.
We've already done that. We've done that enough.
We've already done that enough. They can do it for themselves now.
You just can't make this shit up. All right.
No. We're not going to devolve into it. I'm not going to let it happen.
Okay, so back to the subject at hand. I wanted to know, what is it about a game that appeals to you guys? Is it the art style? Is it the soundtrack? Is it just the overall ambiance? Is it, or does just the genre in general appeal to you? Like what? I'm curious, what is it about a game that appeals to you guys?
Well, something I'm interested about. What's the best about genres? Like, what's the best genre of video game? I suppose it's like a personal preference. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if there's an objectively. I mean, I have two. I think there's two things that make the best genres. But I want to hear what you guys think before I say them.
Okay. For me, it kind of
okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay. For me, I was about to say, it kind of depends on my mood. I kind of prefer the storytelling RPGs. That's just because of who I am. I like that kind of getting immersed into another like character's like story and like getting to know the characters around you. I like it when there's characters that actually have depth to them. I hate it.
You're a JRPG player, aren't you?
What?
You're one of those people they put all those fucking Fire Emblem characters in whatchamacallit into Smash, and you were like, man, I love all these Fire Emblem characters. They're all generic and amazing.
Ew, no.
So that's literally sounds like a JRPG player, what you just said.
I've never played a JRPG. Never. I've never played Fire Emblem. I've never played anything like that.
Well, maybe you should.
Well, wow. Thanks, Brendan. Glad to know you care.
That is all there is in JRPGs after seeing James play through Xenoblade Chronicles.
Okay, don't get me started on James playing Xenoblade. Don't get me started on that.
James is immersed in that culture.
Yeah.
He's literally taking Japanese.
Well, so is Maura.
Okay,
she's
I'm not
learning as like a hobby.
Thank you.
No, she's taking it.
No, I'm not.
As a class?
No.
Then you're more of an otaku than James.
No. I just don't have time to take an actual class. Piss off, Brendan.
Not for blood. But I think you missed the boat. So we'll go with this for now. But what I was talking about with genre was something different. But I think the best genre. So it depends what you want out of it, I guess. Right. I really like being competitive, which is part of the reason why I've not played very many single player games in the last while. Is because I just spend so much time playing like Dota. First of all, Dota is just a fucking endless pit of time. I mean, genuinely, there are people that play that game for over. I would say the pros probably have over 100k hours in that game. It's scary to see how much time there's still things to learn and get better at. Always, it really is an incredible game. But like even like League is the same way. Like I feel like League at some point you really do hit a hard skill cap. Like I'm pretty sure like that's what I feel like though. I don't know. Maybe other people have different opinions, but like multiplayer games, it's like I like just like always being able to improve, and then beating other people is fun. And I also like being on teams with people. I think that's super fun. Although it's incredibly tilting when they suck. But it's just, you like meet lots of people online. That's like part of the lore of the internet, I suppose.
Sometimes those games where your team is boosted and, just like you feel like they're holding you back are some of the most fun. Because if you get ahead, or you have, all the items or, whatever resources you need to carry, those are some of the most satisfying wins you'll ever get. Whenever you're able to carry and go against the odds.
Maybe satisfying wins. I mean, I in Dota that doesn't really happen because in Dota you can't 1v5. It's not the same as League in that way. But
a lot of broken
I definitely think like yeah, I just think it's more about like I've had lots of really fun games in Dota where I've like lost miserably or whatever. Like sometimes you just get in and you have a really good team and they're like all memers and it's just like super fun because all you do is like BM on the enemy, just like 5-man 1 lane or something in like at like 2 minutes, just like take their tower and then all chat them, out of existence. It's just like sometimes you just have teams that are really, really fun and you just lose because you guys are just having a good time and you're not being serious and keeping track of what's going on. But I definitely think like multiplayer. I think probably, so it depends what you want to get out of it. I like being competitive sometimes. So generally when I'm in that mood, obviously like I think MOBA or FPS are both fine. I mean, I think there's like the competitive genres and then like the non-competitive genres. So really, I think all competitive genres are pretty much created equal. Like I think MOBAs just have a different type of thinking than FPS, right?
Yeah.
FPS is more like you got to click on heads and thoughts come secondary.
Well, it's also,
whereas MOBAs are just all thought.
Arguably, reaction is just so much more important in an FPS, at least in terms of speed, than in a MOBA.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But I think that the non-competitive, I think for me at least, non-competitive games fall into 2 categories. They come into the objective oriented and then like the non-objective oriented. Like I think there's games that there are a win condition for this single player game, and there's games that there's like, oh, it's not really there is kind of a win condition and kind of a progression, but it's not really like I think like the best examples I could think of both are like so like open world games would fall under like non-win conditioned games, right? Where like you could just grind forever and play and do whatever you want, and you don't ever really have to beat the game. And what is really even beating the game in a lot of those games, right? But then another one is like the other one's like more linear, right? Like it's like a Mass Effect or a Halo or something. And I think the like perfect embodiment of a game that does not have an objective. It has objectives, but like you really could just play forever and never do the objectives. It's not something you have to do in order to play. Is Terraria. I think Terraria's like Terraria and Minecraft are like 2 number 1
just keep
objective
going
free
forever
games
until you have everything.
And sometimes it's fun to just not have an objective.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fun to just chill.
I mean, sometimes, you really just got to kick back, relax, and just do whatever you want. Have that freedom to, be as creative as possible. Whereas, like, everything else really just tells you, like, this is how you're supposed to do it. Now go do it.
Yeah, maybe that's why people like JRPGs. Like, I don't know, like when I play Terraria, like sometimes I just sit down for 45 minutes, just whack some blocks, dude. Whack some blocks, kill some creeps or whatever, some whatever heroes or whatever characters just walking around, like the zombies or whatever. And then I'm just like, oh, okay, that's whatever. And then other times I want to be super competitive and yeah, I don't know. But just talk to some friends, hit some bricks.
I don't know. I like competitive games, but I have to be in a mood for it. Again, like I have a wide variety of moods that I have to be in for particular games. So like competitive games, I have to be in just like I'm just gonna beat the shit out of someone kind of mood. Because otherwise the games just give me too much anxiety, and then teammates yell at me, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, But in like,
yeah, I'm bad.
Yeah, you like to yell at me.
Yeah.
Because I'm.
That's one of the reasons that competitive games tilt me so much, is because I don't get tilted at people that are mechanically poor at the game. Like, if you suck at aiming, okay, well, let's put it this way. If you play Valorant and you're playing competitive and you suck at aiming, you need to not play competitive. Okay, hot take. But like, what really makes me mad is when people just make dumbass plays, dude. Like I remember CSGO, one of the most just infuriating things that would happen when you play competitive. I know everybody knows Dust 2, and everybody knows B site. And when you're on T side and you rush B site and people stop in the tunnel, like that is the example of not a mechanically bad play, just a brain dead play. And it's so obnoxious because like you'll be playing, like for example, I was playing Valorant yesterday with James, and we run through the thing, and one of our teammates stops right in the middle, and we all just get mowed down by a stupid LMG. And I'm like,
tragic.
I was like, listen here, guys, don't do that again. I was like, I'll give you a hint. When you rush the site, you actually rush the site and you don't stop. Thank you. Welcome to my TED Talk.
Yeah,
I'll flame people. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, I don't play enough FPS to have experienced anything like that. Like when I played CS Source back in the day, I never really played competitive, just kind of lanes or with the friends and the boys. I never really got to experience that level of frustration.
Well, here's
or,
it's
you
like
know,
this. It's like this, Reid.
where you see that.
I'll make a
level.
League of Legends analogy because Dota transferred over really well to League when I went to play it with some friends for like a time. For like 2 months there, I was like really playing League hard, and I thought about playing competitive because I was just like basically got rickrolled all my games and like carried my friends. But you know, whatever.
That's a story for another
different
day.
conversation. But yeah. So anyway, the analogy would be like a mechanically bad game is you don't hit your stun, right? But the brain dead play is you see they just took dragon, and for some reason someone is jungling the jungle right next to dragon, and then they die.
Yeah.
Despite
no, I
there
get
being
that.
a massive thing on your HUD that says they just killed dragon. That is an example of brain dead play that is tilting, incredibly tilting. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's hard because of the time commitment, right? Like I think that's one thing that they talk about why people are so toxic. Like this will be a good topic to talk about when I do a show on this later. But like the time commitment is like a reason because like you're trapped. Like Dota is notoriously bad for it because it's like an hour a game. So like if my carry
It goes that long.
Huh?
It goes that long on that?
Not anymore. It used to. It used to be like hour
Right.
20 minutes average.
Really?
But now in like 7.0 update, which was like almost a year ago, now it's gone down to like 45 30. But used to be an hour.
Okay.
And they're slowing the game down more so it'll take longer. But my point is it's just like you're trapped there with those people and there's no surrender button. For a lot of games there's no surrender button, you know.
League of Legends.
For gaming. Oh, actually cut that out. Don't keep that joke in there.
Yeah, you can't say that word.
Yeah, Riot Games just plays to people's ADHD tendencies, and they're like, oh well, if they're a game for 5 minutes and they just lost 5 rounds, well they're gonna want to quit. And so you can do that.
Oh, yeah.
You can do that in Riot Games. But
I don't know, man. That surrender button came in to be useful. I think it was like a week ago or something. There was some exploit or some bug with one of the heroes, and you could just spam one of your abilities and basically wipe the map. Like they were getting like 500 total kills in a game, and they were all like FF at 15, and it was unbelievable. There was a bunch of people getting banned and such like that, but I think Riot did a lot of it. But that surrender button, if it didn't exist, you're talking about 1,000+ kill game that you held hostage.
well, I mean, what
It's a beautiful
at some
bug.
point when do you just walk away from your computer? Why don't you just like I have auto hotkey? Like at some point when do you not just like make an auto right click script and just like leave your computer? Like that's what I don't understand. Like all these people, dude. Like if you're getting crushed in Dota, like absolutely 30 kills crushed. Like at some point, just make yourself a right click script and just leave because it's just not worth your time. I mean, really, but like I don't know. I guess that comes down to a philosophy thing. Like, should there be a surrender button in a video game?
Well, competitive
Do you
one
think?
at
Reid, do
least.
you think there should be a?
Uh,
You think there should be a surrender button in a?
I mean, it kind of varies. Like, yes, at a certain point, I think like if you lost or won the game. I think at a certain point you're just wasting time for certain variable situations.
So what do you think about this? Like, so the difference, right? Like in Dota versus League, something that I've noticed is, like, you lose in the first 15 minutes of League and people just quit. Like people just quit. Like I'll play Dota and like I'm not gonna say that I do not get pissed or just like mute my whole team or whatever if we start losing in the first 20 minutes. But the thing is, like, I know I'm gonna have to play. So I just go and I farm and I go to the other side of the map. And like the strategies that people use in Dota are so different than what people use in League purely because that surrender button doesn't
I definitely
exist.
do believe that. And I think that is a massive issue in League is that there will be people who see like someone int in the first 5 minutes and go, all right, we're FFing at 15. If you don't, like, I will run it down or hold you hostage in this game. You know?
Yeah. I mean, but do you think that like the existence of that surrender button causes that toxicity, like inherently, or do you think people are just stupid and they're going to do that
I think people
anyway?
are stupid and will do it anyways, but I think the level definitely is going to be higher with the surrender button, in my opinion, like in terms of like people just being toxic towards like people and trying to get them to surrender whenever they think the game is lost. I think you would see more comebacks if the surrender button it would have to not exist at all. I think you might see more comebacks, but I don't know if that's worth the risk or
the risk. But like, what are you risking? I suppose like the argument would be, right, that it's like a video game, and you in theory are playing it to have fun.
In theory,
if people that play MOBAs even know what that word means. But like, I mean, what's like what do you mean? Like, what's like the danger of removing?
Well, it's just kind of
surrender
like the
button?
sanity in a sense. Like, I mean, if I go into a League of Legends game and I go down 0-9, and it's 20 minutes in, I just end super hard. Well, there's just no real point in playing that game out, especially if it's to a character that's super snowbally and it's just going to outscale and the player has good mechanics. There's no real reason to play it out.
Well, I mean, like as a whole, like the outside of League, right? Like you think like for example, like they just put a surrender button into Valorant, which was so different because Valorant played almost exactly like CS, and CS. Can you surrender? You can surrender in CS, I'm pretty sure, in comp games, but
this is where I'd like to know the numbers on Riot's side in terms of like player reviews or player happiness, or I don't know. I don't know how they track these things. I'm sure they're tracking it somehow. I mean, Riot's a pretty intelligent company in that matter.
If I had to guess, they track with engagement. I think that's how a lot of people.
And I mean, League of Legends is really successful, and I would definitely say that surrender button helps a lot because I know a friend of mine who peaked D2 on his climb. He goes, 15 minutes like in Diamond, if we don't have the lead, it's an FF. Like we know it's blown because there's at that point basically they blew all their leads in the early game, and he was just like, we'll just FF 15. Like, that's my philosophy. That was his philosophy, was that they lost that game before 15. There was no coming back because the enemy team had a high level of macro capability that was hard for them or his team to overcome with them throwing in the first 15 minutes. And it was better to save his mental and be tilted at his teammates' problems than to just pull the plug and surrender, lose the LP, and go again.
Okay, so think about it on a more macro level, though. Like, besides just League of Legends. Like, video games in general, do you think, like, if you're playing a competitive video game, there should be a surrender button? Like, you think you should just be able to, like...
I think, in certain games. Like, I mean, baseball. Like, all the way up to, I think it's still in high school. Even, they got
like
run
traditional
rules.
sports, they don't have... Yeah, they got run rules, but how many times...
All right, but if you got a 30-2
if I show
kill
up to a
game
baseball game
in League or Dota, it's over. I mean, there's a certain point where you get enough kills and the enemy team doesn't, to where the game is doomed. Or you get a high enough gold lead. Like, the game is doomed, and so you're able to get out of it.
Yeah, but I definitely think, like, I don't know, I'm a fan of not having a surrender, but I think if you're playing like serious competitive and you're like on the highest level, I think that's different because but I just think it's kind of like the concept of the surrender button.
Well, that's the thing though. It's like
if we're playing basketball, I don't just like walk off the court and be like, I surrender because they're 20 points up. Like I play the game.
That, like, you got to remember, for a lot of people, it's just a casual game. And so, like, if the game's not going well, they're just going to look to FF. But what you're saying at the highest level is totally true. I mean, if you look at the pro leagues for League of Legends, you don't see surrenders happen. Now, they technically can and are allowed to surrender according to, like, Riot's rules. But, I mean, it's very suggestive that you don't do it. Like, the orgs don't promote it or anything.
But don't you think that that's strange that there's like a disconnect? Because like very rarely, I mean, it has happened to Dota where like people have literally surrendered after 5 minutes. Like it's happened because you can surrender literally at any point in Dota, but people rarely GG out until the other team is hitting the ancient. And like the pros are doing that in League. So do you not find it like clearly the pros know something that other people don't?
Well,
and which is why they stick around to the game.
One thing about the pros...
I mean, I doubt they stick around just because...
I think the other thing is the pros typically aren't going to end an impossible lead away. And if they do, I'm confident they want to FF and get out of the game. There are some...
But they
don't. Yes, and I think it's kind of by obligation. They're at the top of the game. They're kind of looked at to be the best and to set a good example and not, just kind of rage quit out of the game because it's an unfortunate hand that got dealt.
But like CS people don't surrender in comp. People get crushed 15-1 or 15-1 and they won't
It
surrender
might
out.
just be kind of a game
I
culture
think
thing.
maybe. I suppose if you gave CS players a surrender button, though, I doubt. They do have a
The surrender button came into League, if I'm not wrong, at the beginning, and so it's kind of always been there. I think I think it was like in season 6 they moved it to 15 or season 7.
I definitely think there's something to be said for a case by case basis, because there are some people who they know when they're beat and they'll surrender. But there are some who are like, I don't care how high the odds are or what the odds are, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know. I think it depends on player mentality when it comes to whether or not a surrender button is yay or nay.
For me, I just don't like it because it gives people a reason to
just throw.
Not try.
throw or not try, because they're just like, well, we can quit. Because for me, I mean, in Dota, people, like I said, people do that all the time, but I had it much less than when I played League. And I didn't even play competitive, which I'm sure is an absolute cesspool comparatively to just unranked.
Yeah. A lot of griefers.
But yeah, and I just feel like, and I think that works with Riot Games' business model, right? Like Riot Games' business model is like, take a game and make it ADHD.
Oh.
Like that's really, when you think about it, that's really what it is. League of Legends. No, I'm not gonna say League of Legends was not an original IP, right? Because there's like a whole controversy behind League and Dota. Like they're allowed to be their own games, okay? I don't think anybody stole or whatever.
Right.
Doesn't matter. And if you have that argument, like I don't really care. But like League, essentially where League and Dota diverge is where Dota's more of like a methodical brain game, where League is literally super fast paced. Everything's a skill shot. It's all about who can be the fastest. Because I remember talking with Hunter about this, and we were like, well, what makes a good strategy game? And Hunter said, or what makes a good MOBA? And Hunter says speed. Speed makes something technical. And I said,
Here's
no,
the storm.
technical ability makes something technical, right? Yeah, no, let's not talk about that. But I think that it fits Riot's game business model. Let's think about it. How often do you guys get a new champion? It literally seems like every other month you guys get a new
I think they
champion.
said they're going to do 6 a year going forward.
Okay,
Or something
6 a
like
year.
that.
There's maybe one a year in Dota. There's maybe one a year, and it's because Riot is
Riot?
dedicated to pushing
Okay,
you guys out.
But Riot
new
has a
content,
crazy
new
history with champions, though. The only
shortening the game.
I don't know the reality of like nowadays, but I believe it's season 4, season 5. They did like a mass push of champions. Like they were doing one every 2 weeks, or they even did a few, like 2 champions in a week. But that was around the time that Tencent was looking to buy them out. And so I believe it's known that Riot did this to help increase their value to Tencent and such like that. Like they were dropping champions left and right, and they were the most broken things ever. And I think ever since then, though, the player base is like, yes, we will really like this. And Riot's like, we have a lot of success at growing the game and developing it by pushing out these champions. Arguably down the road, if we continue to do this and we continue to rework and we continue to bring out new champions, the game is going to keep lasting. The game is going to keep growing.
I mean, yeah, but that's what I mean. Like it fits their, like the surrender button fits Riot Games' business model, because now it's in Valorant too, right? So like when you play League, so I think part of it is like, first of all, retention, right? If you talk like straight retention, the reason for constantly adding champions back is because if you look at any update, I see Riot Games doesn't have their numbers public, but like Valve does. So if you look at Dota 2 players, right? Whenever there's a new update that comes out, like a big one, there's a huge spike in players. Same thing with CS. If there's like a big update, there's a huge spike in players, and then it goes down over time. And they just constantly do that. So every time they push out new content, they get more people back. But then in addition to that, there's more of a something going on than just releasing new content.
Yeah.
At the same time, the games they're meant to be short. They're meant to be quick. You guys have the option to get out and get in the next game. Because what do you do as soon as you hit that surrender button? You get out, you get into the menu, and you queue again.
Yep.
It's exactly the same with Valorant. Now there's like, what do you do? The second you get out, you just queue again.
Yeah. I mean,
So I don't know. Maybe it's more of a macro.
I would hope it would help the player experience to be able to, like, those few rounds or those last few, like, 10 minutes in a game or in a League or a Valorant game that you couldn't have, surrendered out would hopefully
But you don't feel
allow you to feel better down the road when you go to play that next game.
Well, what do you think of this? Do you think that the surrender button encourages that toxicity? Because I
Oh,
definitely think it does.
I 100% agree. I do think it does encourage a level of toxicity to getting out of the game,
So
because there's a huge problem with people who lose lane and then they go around the game literally just griefing, or they'll go push top
yeah,
lane the entire game or any lane, and the enemy team will be 5 stack bot pushing your bottom inhibitor about to take your nexus, and they're sitting
but
top side.
so is it worth? Okay, I definitely do that because I'm a Dota player, but that's just because I'm like, look, there's farm up there, and I'm just gonna die if I go bottom, so I'm gonna go top and farm. But that's just me. Anyway, but I definitely think like, is it worth the trade off? So like, I will get a it's been literally years since I've had a person just be like, I'm gonna walk down mid. It's been years in competitive, and I played a lot of competitive the last year in Dota, and it's been literally years since that happened. Whereas like, I think, is it worth it to have a surrender button to get out of a game 15 minutes or like 20 minutes earlier, but you have to endure toxicity, like an incredible amount of tilting toxicity for that amount of time?
Mm.
Or would it be better to just not have the surrender button and then you get, an eighth as much toxicity? Honestly, probably less than that.
See, I don't know,
Worth of
because I think the
toxicity.
toxicity would manifest into something else. Because like, this reefing that goes on nowadays, why it's so high, in my opinion, is because it's just toxicity manifesting in a different way. Because
Mm.
like in League of Legends, it used to be a massive thing, just run it down mid. I mean, Tyler One made his whole persona about, if you don't do what I do,
Yeah.
I'm gonna run it down your lane originally. I mean, he's not like that anymore, but that was his big thing. I mean, he would just run it down if you didn't give him a kill, or you didn't do something right, or you made a bad play. Like, he'd just run it down mid or end. I mean, that was his way of getting at it. And then Riot started doing more bans on inters and everything. I mean, they gave perma bans to Tyler One, eventually revoking it. And they gave it to other. I mean, they gave it to Jensen. He got a. Well, that one's for DDoS, but I mean, other players have
A
gotten
little
these.
different.
Yeah, a little different. Um, but there have been a lot of players, and like League corrected those. But I think a lot of that just manifested in, okay, I'm basically going to force you to hit that surrender button. It, whether it's me running down
Yeah.
mid, or it's me just sitting in top lane whacking my farms, or just power farming till the end of the game, or not grouping, that I believe is just another manifestation of like one way of trying to get out of the game or release frustrations in some way
Yeah,
or form.
I guess for me, like, I think toxicity probably comes from like that like competitive mentality, right? Because like, if you look at the top people, but I guess part of it is like, generally what you're seeing is they're streaming, and I suppose that affects their behavior as
I mean,
well, in addition to everything. So
Twitch will also
it,
hold them if they're streaming.
yeah, I think so. And like, but you see a lot of people that are like at the top. Like, I remember Sir Action Slacks was a good example. Like, Sir Action Slacks used to be like wholesome, and all it is like, on the Dota 2 Reddit, I just had to stop looking at it because it's just like, oh, Sir Action Slacks is toxic, Sir Action Slacks is this, Sir Action Slacks is whatever. And even if you look at the top level other games like CS, like, I remember watching I don't know, some top level CS player, but they're like crazy toxic,
So like,
and I
that's another good conversation, is like that word toxicity or toxic. Like, what does that really mean? Because like, typically, even in traditional sports, like when you're competitive and someone's holding you back, you get frustrated. You get really angry, and typically you're going to vent somehow, and that's typically you going at the person. I mean, because that happens all the time in traditional sports, where you call someone out for their garbage, or you can go after someone. And so, like, I mean, in video games, like, you're looking at the top, and the top are definitely like toxic quotation marks.
hmm.
But I mean, honestly, that shows how much they care about the game, because they take it that personal, in a sense. I don't know. I mean, you could say that's good or bad, that they take it so personal, and that they care so much. But typically, when you start being toxic, and you start going after someone, I mean, there can be other motivations, but I think at the highest level, it's because they're frustrated because they're probably going to be losing this game because of your actions, and they want to win.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think a lot of it comes from the discrepancy between like, where they think their teammates should be at, and like where they think they're at, and it just bothers them, right? Because they say like uh beliefs determine reality, right? So it's like, I think this is a very good conversation to have on another thing. But it's like, they have this thing in cognitive behavioral therapy, right? It's called ABC. It's like actions, belief, consequences. So you can't change the action, and arguably you can't. Well, you can change the consequence. You can't really change the consequence. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But the belief is really what influences the outcome, right? So like the classic example is like, if the action is I hit my toe, the belief is, well, you can, sorry, the C, you can influence the consequence, or whatever the C stands for. I don't remember anymore. But it's like the action is like I stubbed my toe. The belief is, God, the world's out to get me. This sucks, right? And so the C, or whatever the consequence is, that you're just like brooding over it all day. Whereas like if you just hit your toe, you stub your toe, right? The A, the B is, the belief is, oh, it's not a big deal. Like I just stubbed my toe. Then you're going to be a lot less tilted over it. And I think a lot of it has to do with that. That is what a lot of it has to do. Like I think CBT, I don't think CBT is going to fix everything. And I don't think that method is going to fix everything, but it's an interesting way for people, because a lot of these people are, well, I'll just say it's probably a good thing for a lot of people to look at, because the belief is, I think they're like, well, my teammates should be playing better, and they should be doing this, and they should be doing that, and that just feeds into it. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, I'm definitely guilty of this, but just like feeds into the loop of like the belief loop of like you just get more and more tilted and more tilted, and it's just now it's everyone's fault but mine. It can't be mine. And but you see, like, there's certain people that are like they're able to break that cycle.
Yeah, there definitely are. The other thing is like the word toxic. Like it gets used so much nowadays that kind of the meaning is like all over the place,
Right.
But the other thing is that with like the player base for a game like League or something like that, or really any game, like why people often get to that point as well is like just another method is because that's their way of coping with like their hard day of work. They come home, they finish an 8-hour shift or 12-hour or whatever they're due for their living. They come home, they finally have free time, and it's like, all right, I want to play some video games. And it's like, what game am I picking today? It's like, all right, I'm going to play some League or something. And then they get into this game, and then all of a sudden, this other person who has no relevance in the world for this guy, I mean, this person is in another country for all they care, and they just end up running it down when this person just came in there and just wanted to, like deal with, the hard day's work, cope with emotions, or, get happy from playing the few games, because it registers in his brain when he plays a certain game that he's happy, and so he feels good playing it. And then all of a sudden this person comes in here and just starts to ruin his experience gaming. And I think that is what helps to feed also a lot of that toxicity and griefing and such like that for players.
Yeah, I don't know. It's such a hard thing, because it's like I used to play Dota to relax, but it just got to the point where it was like it just wasn't. I think what we're seeing now in the wake of a lot of these pro players retiring is that you just kind of get like burnt out on it. I think for a lot of people, and also like declining. So something in Dota 2 in particular, and we've kind of seen this with other games too. Like CS has also had this type of trend where you're actually seeing overall player numbers decline by quite a bit, but the viewership numbers are like doubling or tripling. I mean, going up by these like insane amounts. And what is the reason for that? I think a lot of it is because people found that they like the game, but what they dislike is that they dislike the you just, at some point, just what's the point, right? Like, what's the point of playing video games?
Right.
Like, you're just dumping hours, like if you're just dumping hours into a game that realistically nothing will really ever come of.
Yeah.
And so what's the point? Are you doing it for fun? If you're miserable, then why are you playing it?
Well, sometimes they get that gaming addiction and all that other fun stuff, but
yeah, and that's a word.
Yeah. Overwatch though.
I mean, I could talk about it, but I don't want to steal the conversation from you on that one.
Yeah, no, I had a buddy of mine who played a lot of Overwatch and such like that, and when the meta started to shift towards goats and all that, they started to get to the point where he was like, "This sucks. Like, I can't play this game." Like, Overwatch has a lot of problems. How they got their own problems, like every other league out there. But I remember he just one day told me, he was like, "Yeah, I kind of quit Overwatch." Like, he was like, "I still love the game. I'll watch the game. Like, I still watch the Overwatch League, but I won't play it. I can't play it.
Yeah.
I just get too frustrated and I hate it. And it's like, this isn't what I want."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think that disconnect between being like, oh, well, I'm watching. Like, I can't even think of a famous owl player. I have not played Overwatch in forever.
Same.
But like, whatever. I like watching this one famous owl player get stun locked out of existence by Brigada. But for me, it's not fun. It's not fun when you're doing it. But for them, it's just like, oh no. All you hear is the caster be like, oh no, and they're gonna trade here, and the Brigida's gonna take down the whatever McCree or whatever the fuck is in meta in that game anymore. I don't even know. It could be anything at this rate. It could just be 5 divas. Oh no,
They got
roll
roll-lock. And they have full bans.
Yeah.
Good God. But yeah, like my point is, it's I think people are starting to realize that what is the point of playing these games?
Yeah.
But it's
Because people are realizing that they're so toxic and you're just drowning hours. I mean, I got 3,200 hours in Dota.
yeah.
And I definitely came to that point where I was just like, at some point it's it's like I get so tilted because it's just so obnoxious that like, why am I even
Well, the
wasting
other
my
thing
time
is
on it
like
anymore?
at a certain point, you kind of just you got to decide for yourself. Like, am I truly playing this for casual fun, or am I playing this for a competitive need, or some other reason? Because I look at a game like League of Legends and such like that. A lot of people play it because they can't do anything competitive. Like, I know for myself, like I came from traditional sports, and so like when I found League of Legends, it was like great. Now I have a competitive means because I couldn't really play competitive basketball anymore. I couldn't really play other traditional sports and such like that in terms of like getting a team together or something like that. It was if I did get friends to play, it was more casual, more fun. And for me, it was like I don't really care for this anymore. Like, I kind of lost the competitive like satisfaction of playing certain things, and so like when you go to certain video games, it's like, all right, like I'm getting a competitive need out of this game, or am I looking to just get a casual? Because a lot of people, I think, look at those games in terms of competitive casual, and whenever they get to the point where they're like, man, I really don't want to go casual anymore, and it's like, oh, I have no other means for this game, but I still like the game, and I don't want to go super hard anymore, and it's like, all right, I'm going to go just watch the game and spectate it, and I'll still be able to like enjoy the game, and I'll be able to remember the fond times I had playing it and everything. Like, it's going to be great, but I no longer have to deal with that competitive player who's just going to come after me for being casual or not being that good at the game when I just wanted to kind of have some fun.
And I think what will be curious to see it how as esports evolves, like how it's going to follow traditional sports in that way. Because I think this is going to just be a continued problem. I don't want to say like the best example would be is like all of a sudden there's like this culture shift where like I think we're kind of in a culture shift now where people are realizing that maybe they shouldn't spend so much time on video games, like or maybe not that, but maybe they shouldn't spend so much time on these competitive video games because like where's the avenue for it, right? Like really right now you either play it would be like having the NFL and then high school football is the next highest level that you can have, and really we don't even have that yet in the esports industry, so it's just like such a discrepancy between all that, and I wonder how as that grows how that's going to affect that, because you think eventually it's just going to get to the point where like people just sit down and play pickup games of fill in the blank esport here all day, and then eventually they move into high school, do that in high school, hopefully they move into college, do that in college, and then all of a sudden what's next?
I mean,
you either go tier 2 or you go pro
that
league,
infrastructure is like very slowly coming and such like that to esports. I mean, Play Versus is growing in the high school leagues. I was talking to someone from my old high school not long ago, and they were saying that Play Versus was finally coming, and the district was looking to get involved in esports, and they're looking more now than ever. And I mean, I totally remember. However, one thing that struck me was collegiate esports is definitely like they're trying to base it totally off of traditional sports, in the fact that like you go high school to college and then college to pro. However, a lot of the pros are like, that's never going to work, and it should never work like that, because your reaction speed, no matter what, is going to go down as you get older. And so if we can get that next generation, 13, 14, 16, however old, the youngest, player in the league, well, we got the advantage. They're going to have the better mechanics. They're going to be faster and everything like that.
Mm.
Well, the problem is, right, like we have no way of getting those. I mean, first of all, there's a literal legality issue. Like the youngest you can hire is 15,
Yeah.
right? Like in high school, you can't even make written commitments till you're in your senior year.
Yeah, I get that.
So how are we gonna say that? How are you gonna explain? Because you know a lot of the money is essentially, I mean, to like Korea and Japan, it's big, right? And it's probably bigger there than it is here. But what do we see when we see these, like, I guess you'd call them like luxury sports, right? Like, where are they the biggest? They're always the biggest in the U.S. So when they catch on, all the money, or a lot of the money, I feel like, will probably be here.
Mm.
And so how are we going to explain to people and say, hey, you're 15-year-olds. How are we going to explain to people that are not in our generation, that didn't grow up with video games, or people that are in our generation didn't grow up with video games? How do you explain to someone like that, yeah, hey, your 16-year-old son, yeah, we want to sign him away to play on an esports team on a international level, and we want to make merchandise of him and put him in the spotlight?
It's arguably easier if you go to Korea and such like that. I mean, the famous League of Legends player Faker just got like an ice cream deal. I mean, the dude goes on TV shows all the time and such like that, and he has a massive public, persona.
He got an ice cream deal?
Yeah, he's got ice cream.
What the fuck?
Big money, bro.
All right.
Yeah,
You mean what? He got like a Bennett, like an equivalent Ben and Jerry's flavor? Is that what you mean? Or
No,
I've never heard of that happening.
literal ice
Like
cream, like wrapper, like you buy
yeah.
at the
So
store,
like if Ben and Jerry's made a Brendan flavored ice cream, like it would be like
yeah,
God.
it's like
right.
Faker's
Okay.
some ice cream,
Interesting.
like some company named ice cream after him, or something like that. It's
All
got,
right.
like, strawberry, vanilla, or chocolate in it, or something
Interesting.
like that.
So it's a Neapolitan, but
let
it's
the
for
royalties
esports.
roll.
Yeah, my point is that it's a lot
Yeah.
more public in Korea and such like
Yeah.
that. I feel like it's a lot easier, arguably, to do something like that. But if you look at that, how did they get to that point? It's through a lot of publicity and showing kind of the greatness of esports and the career path and the possible success, and that it's not all a waste, or it's there's something to it. There's an end.
Yeah.
And here in the U.S., like, how do we explain it to people in our generation, older generation? How do we explain it to people in general? Well, it's just by spreading awareness, by having by having more information spread about different esport leagues and such like that.
I mean, I
development of the
I
high
don't know
school
if-
leagues, development of the collegiate leagues, or wherever we can get.
but it's
esports.
different, right? Like you can't like, so for example, right, like if I create a new physical sport, right, and I spread that around, that's it's an easier sell to do. Spreading,
I think what it has to do
So-
with
so
is
here's the-
how like integrated into your daily life it is, because like normal sports are everywhere, and like you can sign kids up for like little league, but esports is like a different level, it's a different mechanic, and a lot of like parents, like hell, my mom still doesn't even understand that you can't pause an online game. So it's kind of a generational thing. I feel like as our generation gets older, maybe we can start implementing more like esports into younger ages, but still,
I don't think.
it would still be weird trying to sign like a 15-year-old. Can't even
But
drive
I don't
yet.
think realistically you can compare a 1-to-1 to physical sports.
Oh,
And
yeah.
here's
Oh yeah,
why.
that's
Because
true.
But the problem is, right, like when you're in high school and you say I play football, okay, what are you getting when you go to football practice every day? You're getting a workout. You're getting like no matter what you are doing, you're
Getting brain
getting
disease.
more physically strong, right? But when you say like, oh, I'm at esports practice, like and this is another thing, right? Like there are other things that go into like mental acuity besides just sitting in front of a screen all day. But it's going to be so difficult to adopt here because we know that there are dangers associated with sitting in front of a screen all day.
Right.
I mean,
There's
NFL's
I think
got
that the health
concussions.
concerns.
That is true.
I mean, beating your head against someone else. Look, you don't have to be a giga genius to play football. Okay, like you have to be strong. You have to be
Yeah.
fast. Okay, and I don't think that's.
You gotta have
I
a
think
high
it's
football
it's
IQ.
difficult to make a one a one-to-one comparison because it's just like what are people going what people think when they see esports, right? Like I think about that Colin Cowherd clip we were listening to.
God.
But like that's an excellent example. I feel like that's a lot of what people think of esports. Like, yeah, the clip is old and it didn't really age very well, but I think it is what a lot of people, even people in our generation, think of esports. Like we're just a bunch of turbo nerds that play video games for fun in their mom's house.
That's why, like,
but I don't think you'll be able to sell that to parents, is what I mean.
Yeah, well, I totally understand
any
that.
Stage.
I think it'll get better with time. I think it'll get better with more publicity, more people talking about it. Because the other thing is, like for instance, Rick Fox, he made tremendous leaps and bounds for the esports industry when he went to go talk to different talk shows, or he just went to talk to different people in traditional sports. I mean, we're talking about Rick Fox. I mean, this guy's a Laker legend, basketball legend. I mean, he talks to a lot of different famous people in traditional sports and just in society in general, kind of spreading the word. I mean, he was a huge seller for esports to help normalize it. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing is, like, you have to normalize esports. Like, you can't, if this is to continue going forward, we can't just look at it on the lines of like, well, there's no ends to, the goal. Like, you put all this time into esports and there's no ends meet. And, you can go to high school and what are you really getting out of going to, your Valorant practice or your League of Legends or your Dota practice? Well, I mean, hopefully it teaches you a certain level of like thinking ability, so hopefully some sort of critical thinking skill in a sense, or some sort of health routine and such like that to keep you in healthy shape.
Well, yeah, I think that normalization comes with understanding.
Yeah,
because like I think that's something that I personally at least would like to delve into further and eventually hopefully fund is like research into these things, right? Because like right now, I mean, the way we get money for research is scuffed, to say the least. So, but really, you have to jump on a trend. Hilariously, the way you get funding for research is you jump on a trend, right? So, like, if the most recent thing that's been in the news is tuna in the South Pacific Sea, I don't even know if that's a thing, are endangered. Like, where there's going to be a lot of money right now doing research? Tuna in the South Pacific Sea. So, I think it's kind of hard because I think at some point someone's going to have to push forward the knowledge that we have, because right now we just have a lot of tangential knowledge, right? Like we have a lot of knowledge of like, well, we know that working out can make your mental acuity higher, right? But we have so many different problems with that, because how do you measure mental acuity? Like it's different for person to person. Like how do we create a scale? And then in addition to that, like, okay, in what context was that done? How does that apply to esports? How does that apply to like the different markers that we want to set up to measure? So it's just like so difficult research wise. There's a lot of.
So the easiest
I'm going to
thing
stop
I can
now,
like
but
look at,
I would like to delve more into that at some point.
The easiest thing I can compare to that is just the NFL and the concussions. I mean, they played the game for decades without proper safety equipment. I mean, they also knew about concussions, or what is it, CTE officially, for a long time. But I mean, it took a long time for that research to even discover the disease. And I mean, I think that just comes with esports as well. It's going to take time for certain things to be developed. But I mean, that doesn't mean we can't start now.
Well, I mean, we can.
The other thing is,
we can start, but it's different. Like I said, you can't make that one-to-one comparison.
Yeah,
because it's because, like I said, no matter what you're doing, if you're in a sport, you're working towards being more physically fit. Whereas in an esport, at some point the chicken has to come before the egg, and I think that there's a lot of knowledge that has to come before, really, we can normalize.
That makes sense.
Of it. I think there needs.
But
to
my
be
point was, it's just a matter of
the scientific community.
It took so long for the NFL to or just science in general to understand CTE and the concussions from football and everything. And I'm just saying, like, that kind of research is just going to naturally come in with time on esports and such. Because I mean, Uzi just retired with chronic pains in his shoulders and wrist and type 2 diabetes, and he had said in prior interviews before that doctors in China told him his arms are like the age of a 30 and 40-year-old. He's in his 20s. I think he's 23, and his arms are like a 30 to 40-year-old. Like, holy Christ, that is scary to think about. That is
the amount of physical. Yeah, I mean the amount of physical and mental research that we need to do on how specifically this affects people, I think is going to be huge on like affecting the normalization, because it's something that I noticed recently, at least taking a good old trip down to Google Scholar just for a couple hours trying to find things that were specifically on esports, is I found a lot of like meta-analysis papers, but they were almost entirely, most of it was economics. There were very few medical ones that I found, and the thing is, like, a lot of the medical knowledge that was in these research papers didn't really directly pertain to esports. It was like in another context that people put in their meta-analysis to back up their, you know, whatever they thought or something like that. Right. And it's just like, you know, I think we need a lot more pointed knowledge, because measuring someone sitting in front of a screen 6 days for work, you know, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day for work is completely different from measuring someone that sits in front of, because you know, if let's say you work a desk job, and like you were saying earlier when we were talking about tilt, right? Like, you work a desk job, you sit at your desk 8 hours a day, and then you come home and you're like, I want to relax. So you sit in front of another screen and play video games. Like, how is that different? That is vastly different to your general office worker that just goes home and, like, I don't even know, reads a book or like just sits there or just goes to bed. Maybe some people just go to bed, you know, and like that and not only that, just like, you're right, the stress on your body is immense, but we don't quite understand that yet, and we haven't really been taking care of our players.
Kind of going with that, like, I remember, I don't know when it was, but I remember at some point, Pobelter from the LCS, he did something, I think it was like with ESPN or something. They like hooked him up with a bunch of like measuring devices and such.
Oh, is this like the eye? They did like the eye tracker.
Yeah, they did eye tracking.
Okay, I saw this. And they did like, they put a haptic like vest on them that like had all
something
these
like that. A bunch of different feedback analysis and such like that, and they were tracking like his reactions and where he was looking on the screen, where he was clicking. They were like breaking it all down, and we just don't have enough data on that. I mean, because that kind of data can be based off of, like, in comparison to help make and figure out what the health condition is like in that, or how to continue to help that player last as long as possible.
And like I said, that's where a lot of the research comes in. But when you think about, one of the I think a driving force that's going to be behind that research is going to be getting colleges in the esport game.
Yeah, I mean, that's where so much of our research comes from.
98% of freaking research comes from these stupid universities. That's where it comes from. There's hardly any independent research at this point. Maybe what it feels like. I mean, don't quote me on that, but that's certainly what it feels like to me. Is it's almost entirely research just by universities, and then ironically they sell it despite being publicly funded. But that's a different
that's
conversation.
I mean, the other problem is like
the
industry is so new and so undeveloped that, like, I mean, in North America and Europe, I would say, like, they don't have to play as much as, like, in Korea or China. I mean, I've just seen some of the kind of, like, horror stories, at least that have been publicly said. I'm sure a lot of other players have it a little bit different, I would hope. But, I mean, they literally just wake up and play, like, 14 hours plus a day. And then they eat, sleep, body.
Yeah, and they eat like crap, and they feed them like some crappy food.
I mean, it's just,
they don't do workouts, they don't do stretches.
I mean, but they have no free time. Like in Korea, it was known for the longest time, and it's still known. Like, you can't have a girlfriend. Like, to be the best,
like an esports
you can't have. It's, I mean, it's just disturbing the fact that, like, so many players have at least said in the past, like, I can't have a girlfriend. I don't have the time for that. I don't have to commit. I can't commit that much time. Like, I have to focus on my play and, like, respect the game, respect the craft. But, I mean, that's kind of sad that you don't have the free time to be able to commit to something like that. I know in North America it's less of a problem, but then again, North America is one of the worst regions.
North America's North America. They do what they want.
I'm really curious to not only like the gameplay side of things, right, but so much of, I mean, I actually, funny enough, I saw a post on the Dota 2 subreddit. I know Dota 2, I won't shut up about it, but 2. I saw a post on the Dota 2 subreddit that's extremely relevant to this. You know who Purge is? Purge is a huge caster and an analyst.
No idea who that is.
It's irrelevant. He's just a huge caster and analyst, right? And he put this video out like 5 or 6 years ago about like how to become a caster. And his number one thing that said was like, you don't need to know people to become a caster. And it came up because this whole controversy with like recently in the Dota 2 community, where one of the top casters now commented on it. He's like, "You must be a freaking idiot because you have to know people in order to get into it." But like, how do you know people now? You don't know people because you know people. You know people because you're on LinkedIn or you're on Twitter,
Right.
and you make a tweet that blows up. Yeah, or Twitch, and you make a tweet or a VOD or a joke that blows up, and that's how people get to know you and you get picked up. Or you're a pub star that streams.
Yeah.
Thompson was a player. Excellent example of that. They picked him up for TI, and he had never even played in the pro scene. He was just some dude that played pubs that was a total like BM star, and they picked him up and they were like, "Is he gonna work?" And he did. But that's my point. Like,
So
there are probably players out there that are amazing,
yeah.
but will never get picked up because they don't have
that's
the
where
social
the
media presence.
amateur
But how is
development
social media?
there? Like,
Well, yeah, but listen to this. How is social media affecting these people outside of just playing
oh,
video games?
well,
I mean, we
that's
know
how
that it's bad for
college
you, but
recruiting works for esports.
could you even imagine?
All they do is recruit off of Twitter. That is.
I know,
the
but could you
most
imagine all this
Tragic.
pressure, and then on top of it, all you're getting told all day is that you're horrible from the freaking Twitter mob,
Yes.
or the Reddit. God forbid the Reddit mob. I mean, people think Twitter's a cesspool. Have you been on Dota 2 subreddit?
Ooh.
Well, this
It's
is Reddit.
ridiculous.
To be honest.
Yeah, it's Reddit be like that sometimes, but like, really though, the Dota 2 subreddit sometimes it's just it's so homogenous.
Mm.
It's and there's sub communities
Yeah.
that are better, but
But I mean, getting discovered.
how
I
is
mean,
it that?
League of Legends, one of the best casters now, is Captain Flowers. I mean, he was a no name at one point. I mean, he literally,
Yeah.
I believe he said in the past that he literally just picked up, like just random events, 5, 10, 20 views, tournaments or whatever, and he'd cast them. And eventually, he got big enough and got, his name out there from his hard work that Riot or someone at Riot or something like that eventually got him and picked him up, and now he's one of the most beloved casters in North America for the League of Legends.
But I think being a caster is different than being a
Yeah.
player, right? Like,
That's
and
true.
even not even a player, like just a support role.
Mm.
Yeah,
It's so much about getting discovered
But I
because,
mean-
like, think about it this way: the problem that we're having is even the support people who are in support roles are so part of their value, right, to your company. If you're hiring them, part of their value is their social media persona. Like, maybe not their presence, but like their persona that they have through Twitch or YouTube or whatever, right? Like, and it's so intertwined with who they are.
yeah, that is true. But the thing is also like you got to look at the fact of how esport orgs are operating in the past and how they're operating now. It's so radically different. Like they are now companies, not just this little rogue group of gamers who are trying to make a living, living their dream.
Right.
I mean, now these
Yeah,
are
but
full-fledged
still, but
companies.
But I mean, these companies, do you really think they have people that are dedicated to just scraping the bottom views of? Here's my point. You're not. I don't think you're gonna get picked up by an esports org because you are the best player. You're gonna get picked up by an esports org because you are a good player, and you also have a presence. Because let's think about how you monetize a player, right? You monetize a player in really two ways. Okay, you have them win tournaments, right?
Right.
And that's part of the being good part. But it's not even so much the winning tournaments that's making you the money. It's selling merch, getting cuts of their stream revenue, spotlights like your YouTube revenue off them because you're going to support them, and your things like that, or your highlights, your Twitter, your Instagram, like all that stuff. Or sponsorships. How else are you going to sell sponsorships if they're unknown? Like if they're a good player, they're not going to have that much of a following. So you have to have someone to run their Twitter
Kind of
and
argue
YouTube.
against that in a sense because like one of the greatest mids now to date in League of Legends, at least in Europe, Caps, he was picked up in solo queue. I mean, he picked up the name like Young Baby Faker. I mean, just
But
because
that
of
was-
his solo queue skills. And I mean, if you're
You don't
truly the
think- You don't
greatest,
think that's?
like you're
But how long ago did that happen?
2-3 years ago, something like that.
Okay, how much has the player base of League of Legends expanded in 3 years?
It's expanded pretty.
Probably by an order of magnitude.
But see,
right?
but that's the thing though. Is like, I think those numbers are more in the bottom than at the top. And so I think if you truly are the best, you still get picked up because of your in-game, credit from doing amazing outplays or having great macro, to show your contributions to the game. I mean, that stuff spreads in the challenger talks, and their little, conversations and such like that. You'll get a Nico. I mean, if you're toxic, people are going to know you're toxic.
So what do you think about this? So like I think, right? So what you say is that they're not just like a conglomerate of turbo nerds, right? Like these businesses, right? Okay, so that's for me. That's even more in favor of the argument that the reason you're getting picked up a player is so much of a part of because you have a social media presence.
It definitely
because
is.
how much
That definitely plays a
like
role, but I don't know if that's because of like
I
for the
think
pro leagues. Like,
okay, here's what I think. I think that it is more important for you to have a social media presence and following and be monetizable than it is to win tournaments. What do you think of that?
I mean, yeah, kinda. I don't want to bash them, but I mean, Optic Gaming in the past was always. I mean, they were always competitive. They were always one of the highest. I mean, they were always one of the best in COD competitively, and I mean, it really didn't win that many championships in a sense. I mean, they won a lot of tournaments. They were always top rated. I mean, they were always competitive for the most part. But I mean, how they were known was through the vlogs, through different games they played, or through their online presence. And so, I mean, I totally get it. And you would definitely have more value because of that social media presence and everything like that, because you're just putting one more, egg in the basket of
But if they're
reasons picked up.
businesses, I mean, how are they making money? Because like at the
but
end
that
of the
goes to,
day,
like, org
is it
culture.
really winning what's making you money? Because
So
I don't think so.
I heard Steve from Team Liquid say this. I think he was on Hotline League or something like that, and he was talking about this kind of exact thing in a sense. And he was talking about brand identity for an org. So like I just said with Optic, their brand identity was more about like being competitive and still getting there to win games, but it was more about content creation first. Whereas like a Team Liquid, it's all about winning. I don't want to say it's only about winning, but they are all about winning. If they're not winning, they're not doing something right, and the org is going to be overhauling everything. Like they're still driven to promote content, but it's all about that competitive nature. I mean, if they're not going to pick up a player just because they have a huge social media following. They're going to pick him up because he's the best of the best. And it kind of goes into that.
But how much longer is so here's the thing, right? Like I just think that if they're businesses, if they're purely businesses and they are there for profit, that they are looking for the person that is the most marketable. And at some point it almost doesn't matter that you're winning. So like for example, like Simple in CS:GO, right? I don't know how much Navi wins, but I don't know. I'll have to look it up. But my guess is Navi doesn't even care how much they win, because you know who Simple is, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't even play CS. Like you don't even follow CS, and you know who Simple is. That and Navi is making money off them. Every time you watch his stream, every time you watch one of his YouTube videos, every time you see a tweet about him, Navi is making money off him. Which is fine. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong with it. But
player in a sense, it's kind of like the NBA, in a way. Then, because like
he's good, but it's
NBA
almost
in
more
a reference point.
Presence.
Because like, I mean, that's the thing. You look at the Lakers. Who do you really hear about? LeBron James. I mean, he is the greatest of all time right now in the league. He's the best of the best. But like each team has their star player, and they're going to market that all hell and back. They're going to be the fundamental star. They're going to be the fundamental roots and foundation for your organization. I mean, like you just said, if they're trying to maximize their profits and their capabilities, I mean, doesn't it just make sense to, like, if you find a star who has extremely great talents, and you compare that to just another star of equal talents, which one would you rather take? I mean, I would rather
I would rather take the I would rather take the more marketable. But what I'm saying is I don't think you can compare it 1-to-1 either, because I think what you're getting is a trade-off between being the best and being marketable. Because I bet you there are people that are absolute pub stars that will never get picked up.
I don't know. I mean,
because of that.
I think you can.
I mean, maybe you can, but I just think it's so important. It's so vastly important. That's how these people make money. Because like thinking back to the international, right? The international, the top team gets like I don't even know how many millions of dollars.
Like 30-something million.
Dude, the second team down, I don't even know. They get like a couple million, and then the team underneath that. And here's the thing: like we're talking like we have to expand the esports industry, right? Like we're talking like, okay, well, how do we make players better, right? Because that's essentially what, like if you look at traditional sports, that's essentially what they've done, right? Is they've taken the science of making a human at peak pinnacle performance and they've perfected it, right? So down to everything they eat, down to everything that they do, it's scientific, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, obviously that costs a lot of money, right? Because like let's say they live in a team house. Okay, how much money do you think it costs to feed and house a person for just 1 year? Just it's a lot of money. It costs a lot of money.
I mean,
Feed and house one person for just 1 year. But here on top of that, right? You got to pay for power, you got to pay for PCs, got to pay for promotion, travel fees to go to events, event entry fees, right? And all these different things. There's lots of miscellaneous costs in there and things like that. That adds up quick. And then God forbid you add in someone that's like a scientist, right? Because like for me, I have a degree. And so just even for me to go in there and do scientific studies, which arguably I'm barely even qualified to do. I don't even have a master's in it, but I could do it. I could go in there and do scientific studies. Just for me to do studies or to try and improve these people would be very expensive for them because they'd be paying me probably upwards of $20, over $20 an hour to be doing it. And it's going to cost them a lot of money for me to do that for a whole year because that's how long it's going to take for me to perfect it. And and they're going to expand well beyond that. And I just think that money is going to become so much more important because, if you spend all that money you invest in your team, they don't win.
A lot of esport orgs are hitting that, I guess, conundrum right now. I mean, a lot of the orgs are looking at their content development and going, wow, we need to get more fans, more money. We need to start selling more merch so that we can expand the org and have more, depth in our pocketbook. That way we can start to hire these personnel. I mean, this is why they're also, a lot of orgs are looking for these high-end investors to hold them up. I mean, that was one of the major problems when esports was coming up, was that all the money in esports was from the investors.
Angel investors.
Yeah, there was very little in terms of the ratio from investor to like the actual industry income from like jersey sales and content you heard from YouTube, Twitch, and other stuff like that. But that's the thing, is a lot of these orgs now are prioritizing that because they realize what they got to do is they got to start making money. They got to start making. I mean, not that they weren't looking at it, but they really got to start pushing on how to become profitable, how to increase sales, how to do this, how to do that. Because, I mean, they know if they want to be legit and they want to be the best, they're going to need to have their, sports psychiatrist or, their mental health coach. Like they're going to need these behind the scenes staff that helps run the orgs. They're going to need someone to do data analysts and all that stuff. But how do you get those personnel? Through money, through investors, through income. And I mean, I think a lot of those orgs are doing it. I mean, so many orgs have merch drops all the time now, and limited edition, but I mean, arguably the best orgs are like that. I mean, we look at FaZe Clan, huge merchandise game. 100 Thieves, huge merchandise game. G2, huge merchandise game as well there. I mean, the successful orgs are the ones that are able to do these things. And I mean, I hate to compare them, but it really is one of the closest things you compare it to. Traditional sports, the most successful ones are the ones you see all the time. I mean, everyone, whether you watch sports or not, majority of the population in the United States is going to know who the Lakers are, or who the Chicago Bulls were, thanks to Michael Jordan and all that. But like, when you start selling the merch, you become super successful. You're going to spread the brand. You're going to establish yourself as an elite org. And you're going to be able to help identify the legitimacy of esports and your organization going forward.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I'll say to close us out on this topic would be that I'll just be curious to see where things go, like the money-wise in the esports industry, just to see where the money's going to come from, how people are going to monetize. But another thing, I'll just be interested to see where science. I mean, I really do like science, and I'll just be curious to see where science meets at a juncture with esports. And like I said, we will have many opportunities in the future to go in depth on this subject of like how science, joins with esports. But I think that it's going to be super important because I think another thing that people need to realize about the esports industry is that it's not all about the players. Behind every player is 10, 12, 10, 20, 30 supporting staff that are making it work, and they're making them play at their top level. And I think that is something that often gets lost in the esports industry. And I think people think that it's just the players and the manager that just sit behind a computer all day and make these guys do their thing. When in reality, the esports industry is going to grow so exponentially, but people don't understand that because all they see is that, when they don't realize that every single time a production is put on, there's hundreds and hundreds of people working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see where it goes, and especially in the way with science, and we'll get time to talk more about it.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, hint, hint.
mm-hmm.
All right, Reid, anything you'd like
Closing
to
it
add
out.
before we wrap things up?
No, not really.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate your time.
no problem.
It's valuable.
Yeah,
So
that was fun.
thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, please like and subscribe, hit the bell, do the YouTube things. If there's someone you know who you think might enjoy listening to us talk about video games and esports and life in general, please share. We appreciate you listening. And we'll see you next time.